So there's this thing that happens whenever I go to conferences. I mean, it happens all the time. I travel around the world to meet and speak with tens of thousands of leaders. Doesn't matter what country, doesn't matter the venue. It happens religiously. So I had to really take account, because I'm not talking about the conference sessions, the stages, the conversations. What I'm talking about is what you don't see. I'm talking about the private conversations that occur in the hallways and passing. It happens in break rooms, in the restrooms and corners, on Zoom rooms, privately. It's almost like people treat it as if it's a dirty secret, as if they don't want to do it publicly, like it's shameful or something. It's happening to Americans around the country every morning. It happens throughout the day, in our most stressful moments, in our households with our families. And I'm building this up to let you know it's something that's very commonplace, but not talked about enough. You may be wondering, what is she talking about? I'm pretty sure over half of you participated in that act just this morning, maybe even on your way here. It's one of those things that's still taboo in a society where we've had to address some pretty hard conversations. And just about 50% of Americans pray on their way to work every single day. So why is it we can't bring our faith to work? I ask you this because in a society where we put a great deal of emphasis on mental health and wellness, on emotional intelligence, as we should, on therapy, which is exceptionally important, why is it we cannot equally account for a place for our faith and spiritual wellness in the space where we make the toughest decisions that we have to make every single day? You know, as I thought about this, I said, wow, we can talk about just about anything in society. Nothing's off the table. But for those of us who practice some type of faith daily, a form of spiritual wellness to build up yourself every day, it's a practice of believing something bigger than you, immersing yourself in the human experience of who you are, why you're here, and what you're created to do. So what bigger form of immersion is there than your spiritual wellness? But it's not talked about. It's done in private, on your breaks, in your car, in the lunchrooms. In schools, it's not allowed, but yet it's important. What happens when you don't have access to therapy as an option in a moment of crisis? I tell you this because where mental health is commercialized and gets a lot of commercial time, we don't account for the fact that when therapy is not accessible, what do we lean on for our strength, our countenance, our conscience? Where do we go when we have our own moment of personal crisis that gives us the tools to navigate life in all of its difficulties? I mean, here's the thing about spiritual practices. You're either born into it, you discover it in your life's journey, you pick it up along the way. It may be something you're taught, or you could have your own encounter personally on your road through life. However it comes across, the reality is this. We live in a country that's founded on faith, but yet we can't talk about it without fear of offense. Even today, religion and politics are still taboo. And don't worry, I'm not going to preach to you today, but I'm going to go close enough to the edge for us to just have a conversation, if that's all right with you. You know, in a world where there's data, predictions, economic crisis, scare tactics, right? Some of us don't even watch the news because we're afraid of inflation and recession and all of the scary things that could occur. But where do you go inwardly to survive the grim reality of navigating this world without faith? You know, every single one of us in this room is a three-part being, whether you know that or not. Your mind, body, and spirit. Your mind has all of the provisions and protections of emotional care and wellness. There have been psychologists through the ages to study the practice of your mind, how your brain works, the nuances of how you think, how you come up with your reactions to things. We even study the human brain extensively throughout history because the mind is where your thoughts come from. And then there's the body. I mean, come on, in the workplace, we have insurance provisions, we have wellness care. They even give us incentives to make sure we're healthy so they don't have to pay a premium. But if we're three parts and there's coverage for your mind, there's provision for your physical health, where does that leave your spirit? Your soul is made up of your mind, your will, and your intellect. The soul is the part of you that is creative. It's the part of you that comes up with thoughts and ideas. It's the part of you that essentially is the essence of your being aside from your physical self. And the spirit is the caregiver for your soul. How's your spirit today? Are you spiritually well when you walk through the world, when your heart is broken, when you're going through trauma, when you're encountering the divorce, when the child is sick, when your mother is dying, when you're in a crisis? What do you do when your spirit is not well and you have to show up every day at work? Can you be yourself then? When they say be your whole self at work, do we mean it? Because meaning that would mean I have to allow room and space for spiritual wellness. Again, society is riddled with things that fight for our attention daily. Attention is currency. It's our greatest commodity. But how much attention do you pay to the health and care of your spirit? Because if you are a mind, which will pass away when you go, if you are a body, which will eventually leave this earth one day, where does that leave your spirit when you have a decision to make? As leaders in corporate spaces, we are charged with the care of multi-million-dollar assets. I'm talking about some pretty major decisions: budgets, cuts, furloughs. Do we hire? Do we close? What do we do about our employees? What are the HR management processes to manage people when they're out of order or unruly or they're not following our rules? But we forget that we manage processes. We lead people. So my question is this: where are the spiritual leaders? Who are the allies for your spiritual wellness? We talk about allyship and diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's allyship for race, for gender, color, ethnicity. There are allies for your mental health, to make sure that there are benefits accessible, to make sure that you have information, resources available to you. Seminars, practitioners who come and make themselves available, probably the therapist that's accessible in your office space. We even in your workspace now have employee resource groups. We have a day of commemoration for every ethnicity under our rainbow. But what about your faith? Okay, that may not be your story if you don't come from corporate like me, but I know what you can relate to. Some of you probably scrolled social media this morning. You would be doing it right now if we weren't sitting in this room. And the thing about scrolling on social media, the thing that stops you from scrolling, you see some news, something shocking from a friend, a loved one, a family member, and they announce something. They're struggling with a diagnosis. They're battling cancer, a brain tumor, a sick child, a crisis. And instantly we're triggered to put up praying hands emojis and give our thoughts and prayers. We're thinking of you. But why is it okay for us to do that without even a thought or notion for perfect strangers, but yet leaders who are charged with regulating our economy, with hiring people, with creating safe workspaces, are not allowed the same privilege or courtesy or consideration of thoughts and prayers? You know, I'm reminded of a situation. When I was formerly in corporate America, there's the duality of being a DE&I practitioner, an executive, and a leader, and the duality of being a faith practitioner and being responsible with the care of souls and praying for them. And I understand, we don't want to offend. But what happens? What happens when your employee can't get through the day? When they got that terrible bit of news when sitting at their desk? One day I walked into the break room at my job. I had my cup of coffee. I'm all ready to go and get my caffeine fix that morning. The lights are off and it's dark, and I hear a whimper, a weeping, a cry that stirred my spirit. And it was one of my employees sitting in the corner, sobbing. And in that moment, I didn't know if I should stay and comfort her or should I leave. And as I got ready to turn, she said, wait. It's okay, you can come in. I need a minute. I can't reach my therapist, and I don't know what to do. You can stay. I said, okay. And so in this moment, I had to ask myself, because of the conditioning that I can't bring my faith to work, I don't want to offend, and I would not enforce, but yet invite someone to an opportunity to be healed. She began to pray herself in that moment. And I sat on the floor in a dark break room. I held her hand and we prayed. And what happened is I had to cross the line of leadership and corporate nuances into humanity and partner my belief with hers. And I had to have hope with her because I understood that in this life, when work is over and everything is said and done, we're three-part beings. And the one that remains is her spirit. And so I remembered in that moment that it is necessary to nurture the thing that will carry us through this life that's so much bigger than a day at work. So again, I ask you this. Can our faith and our spiritual wellness have a seat at the table? After all, we want diversity, right? This room is diverse. We advocate for it. We fight for it. We've marched for it. We've rallied for it. We vote for it. We talk about equity, women's rights, equal pay. We talk about equitable opportunities. We talk about women having a seat at the table and increasing the numbers of women board members across corporations in the country. We talk about inclusion. Everybody has a voice. We want to say and how things are run. In a country where it is absolutely okay to finally, after 400 years of oppression, address color. In a country where people still get offended when they say diversity, they think we're always going to talk about race when it's only one part of the equation. It's okay for us to have a conversation about all the other protected classes in the Civil Rights Act. It's okay for us to have a conversation about your sexual orientation, your preferences. We create space for that. We've lobbied, we voted, rights have been given. It's okay for us to have a conversation about ethnicity. My goodness, we even have a cultural day where we get to wear your traditional garments and celebrate who we are and the families and cultures we're born into. We can celebrate all of these things. But wait a minute. Oh, that's right. I'm at work, but I can't bring my faith. Religion is the last of these protected classes that people still won't touch in the place where we spend most of our time every day. It's like that. That when I need a day for mental health And I have to call it that because I can't give it another name that's not acceptable to say. Maybe I don't need a mental health day. I need a day to simply pray and recharge my spirit. So I want to know, can you accept that my faith is professional? My faith is so professional that when I walk through conference hallways and leaders who are hurting, contemplating suicide, who are battling workplace harassment, have to ask for prayer in quiet corners and in dark rooms and on Zoom calls because we can't discuss it openly out of fear of offense. And if I've triggered anyone today by this conversation, good. I ask you, why is it we can talk about all of those things, but my faith can't have a seat at the table? If you're offended, offense is a choice. It's a choice where I choose to fully immerse myself at work and in the world by being spiritually well and bringing my faith to work. Thank you.